Hey everybody, Riot Mort here, and it is time for a now 14 set tradition as we start another set, TFT Cyber City. This is going to be a rundown, if this is your first time, where I'm going to go over everything that you can expect that you'll see on PBE. Now, with PBE, everything is subject to change. It may be imbalanced, it may have bugs, so if you don't like dealing with bugs, maybe wait a few days. Things aren't perfect when they go to PBE. That's what PBE is for, and thankfully with TFT, we're going to get a lot of PBE games, a lot of data that'll allow us to make the game even better. And then also before I start, just remember, I'm just one piece of a very large team. I just get to represent all the cool stuff they do. So shout out to Liv and her team, as well as Kent and the finalization team, and everyone else on the art, engineering, publishing, everything else. So many teams that have made Cyber City possible. So thank you, all of you. They're the ones who bring these cool things to life. So yeah. All right, let's dive right in and start talking about this content. No need for long-winded introductions. Let's see what's happening in our 14th set. All right, on the champion side, we've got one costs. One thing to note, by the way, is there is one less one cost than there was in a previous set. No particular reason. The structure can support 13 or 14. It's not too detrimental to the game either way. So we went with 13 this time. So just to note that that has changed from previous sets. But yeah, so technically what that can mean is that re-rolling for a one cost can be a little bit easier. So just a little bit. As always, I've ordered these by tanks first and then carries. So on the tank side, we have Alistar, Mundo, Jax, Poppy, Silas, and Vi. Couple highlights here. Mundo, pretty interesting champion. He gets 30% more HP passively. So very good with Warmogs, any of those items that are going to give a ton of health. And then his damage also scales with health. So there's like a 3-star Mundo that his spell can chunk for like 1,500, 2,000 damage if you get him going. So Mundo's pretty neat. 6 Bruiser Mundo can really pack a punch and be pretty tanky. So he's kind of cool. The other one I'll call out is just day 1 of PBE. Vi is probably the strongest tank. She's going to be high demand because she's Cypher, which is our high risk trait we'll talk about later. But Vi is just pretty powerful. Vanguard's really good early. Her spell's pretty tanky. So if you're just looking for a pretty flex frontliner, Vi can be really, really good. On the carry side, Kindred, kind of like Namzi back in the day, shoots a bolt that jumps around, good with IE, Shojin, stuff like that. Kog'Maw is going to be your Ginsu's user, going to be attacking pretty quickly. So you've seen Kog'Maw before. He likes Ginsu's. That's what he does. Morgana's back, another one cost. Spell's a little different than the last set. Instead of hitting one target, she hits 2. Mana cost is a little higher, so she'll spread it out a little bit better, but she's also a Divinicorp, which is kind of like Guild in the past. It's going to give your team AP, so she's always good pretty early. Nidalee, kind of a melee carry here, so she can be pretty decent there. Seraphine and Zyra, both your AP casters, both being techies, which is sort of the AP comp in this set. And then they both, your Shojin, Deathcap, Jeweled Gauntlet kind of thing. And then Shaco. Shaco's probably the most interesting one here. Shaco is our stacking champion this time. He gains AD per kill, so he can be pretty deadly here. Melee champion, so pretty unique items that I'm sure he can use. Will be a terror in the mid game. Also works really well with things like RFC, and then uses his Syndicate trait pretty well. So there you go. On the 2 cost side, we have Darius, Echo, Alawi, Rost, Shyvana, and Skarner on the tank side. Here, Echo can be a really cool tank that flexes into the late game, along with Strategist and also Street Demon. So there's a bunch of builds that work with him. Darius is also very good early. Syndicate gives flat health, and Bruiser scales with health. So for example, if you have a 3 Syndicate 2 Bruiser start or a 3 Syndicate 4 Bruiser start early, you can win streak off that really hard. So definitely consider Darius if you see him there. Beyond that, Rost, Divinicorp, always going to be very flexible. Shyvana's got 3 traits, which is kind of nice. Yeah. On the carry side, we have Graves, Jhin, LeBlanc, Nefiri, Twisted Fate, Vayne, and Veigar. Graves, very scary. This guy is really good early. If you see a Graves 2 early, run. He can do a lot of damage. Graves, kind of like Camille at the launch of the last set, can be really good. Does fall off in the late game a little, But overall, he's a very powerful champion. One thing to note about Graves, though, is he doesn't have a mana bar. So you can't just do like Camille tricks where you give him like Titans and make him really tanky. He does have to auto twice before each spell cast. So making him tanky will obviously help him survive, but it's not going to generate a bunch of mana. So think about that when you're itemizing Graves. He's not going to want that. Other champions that stand out here, I love Twisted Fate. I think Twisted Fate's very good. And also, you know, his normal spell is to just throw a card, but if you have the Syndicate hat on him, he'll switch between red, blue, and gold card. Gold card actually generates gold. So that's kind of fun just to see those different cards get thrown out here. And then Vhagar. Vhagar kind of using a twist we've done before, but in a different way. If he's a higher star level than his opponent that he's casting on, he will do a bunch of the damage as true damage. So a 3-star Vhagar can be very good at melting like a 2-star tank and to do real good damage there. He does kind of fall off late game, but he can be really, really powerful if you want to play him in like a reroll techie line or something like that. So, yeah. Lots of cool carries here. On the 3-cost side, we have Braum, Galio, Gragas, Jarvan, and Mordekaiser as your tanks here. Gragas going to be a big call out here just because he activates 2 Bruiser and he's Divinicorp, which gives your team extra health. So just running like Gragas plus 1 other Bruiser is like 160 health for your team, which is pretty nice, especially early. So I expect to see a lot of like Gragas utility kind of going around here. Otherwise, you'll notice a lot of the tanks, Mordekaiser and Jarvan here, have 3 traits, which make them pretty flexible as well. But all of them, generally, solid tanks. On the carry side, Draven, Elise, Fiddlesticks, Jinx, Rengar, Senna, Varus, and Yuumi. 3 costs are interesting this set in that all of them have their niche, but they're kind of hard to play in some regards. Draven typically works really well in Cypher, requires things like IE, his spell cast does a lot of damage. Elise, kind of like the carry of the Nitro comp here. AP backliner, she does not transform, she just shoots lasers, which is kind of neat. Jinx, another backline AD caster, uses things like IE, Shojin, Ginsu, stuff like that. Varus is AP this time, so don't forget that. Shojin, Death Cap, Executioner, so you don't need to build JG. You can do things like Guard Breaker. Yuumi is going to be a blue buff user, going to be rapid casting, shooting her bolts that bounce around. Really good at taking down tanks. And then there's 2 kind of hard to play carries. Fiddlesticks is a really interesting one, 2 range, but does really good damage and heals from it, but synergizes with Boombots and Techie. He's kind of a harder one to play, but he's not weak. You can definitely make him work. And then Senna's pretty weird. She's a backline AD user, but her autos have an inherent splash to them. They deal damage to nearby enemies she's hitting, and her attack rate is pretty slow. Her spell is very powerful, but it takes forever to build up. But you can go something like Shojin IE. Don't fall into the bait. Don't put Ginsus on Senna. It's not very good. But yeah. All right, 4 costs. Now, we talked about how there's 1 less 4 cost. There is 1 more 4 cost this set than before. And I'll talk about why in a second here. But we have our tanks first. Cho'Gath, Leona, Nico, and Sejuani. Cho'Gath is all about stacking health. Cho'Gath in particular scales with health really well. So 6 Bruiser Cho'Gath is going to be a very scary tank to deal with. If you play him without Bruiser, he's not that great. So calling it out now, you're going to want that at least 4 Bruiser, if not 6 for sure. Leona and Nico are both very, very solid tanks. Really good for that 4 cost carry with like 3 items. They'll do good stuff here. And then finally, Sejuani. Sejuani's back with her big AoE CC. Very flexible. You're going to see her in a lot of endgame comps, activating 2 Bastion, giving that armor and MR to the team. She also has a passive that gives her more armor and MR, so if you want to itemize her, she can get pretty tanky. So, yeah, those are your tanks. Now, on the carry side, what we tried to do here is make sure that no matter what items you're building towards, there were multiple choices here. For example, let's say you've built a blue buff. Well, you've got Annie and Vex. Annie and Vex are going to both be pretty good here, and they'll be able to do good damage. And if you've seen some of the preview videos, Vex has changed. Vex is now just a backliner who sits in the back, 30 mana blue buff, shooting bolts. Annie also shooting bolts and then summoning Tibbers, but they're both blue buff users. If you're a Ginsu's user, you've got Aphelios or Zeri. So Ginsu's users can flex into either one, and you're not stuck like you were in the previous set with like just Twitch or anything like that. Misfortune and Zaya, both kind of Shojin users. Shojin, i.e. big spells, so that's going to be them, and you can flex in between those. Brand going to be your Shojin AP user, but also Ziggs. So Brand and Ziggs, you can go either one. And this is something we're trying here with the 4 cost, that like no matter which items you build, you have a couple. So let's say you build Shojin and then you end up seeing that everyone's running Street Demon and you're contested. Well, you can at least try to go into Ziggs and Strategist and consider different lines and not necessarily be stuck with one 4 cost carry. Let us know how this works out. But yeah. And then finally Zed. Zed's a weird one. Zed is our, you know how I feel about assassins. Zed is a backline assassin. He will jump to the backline and start doing damage. It's kind of like the set 10 KDA Akali, but it'll take him a while to do some damage. He's going to look weak on meters, but he will kill key targets. And so you will find fights where it's like, oh, my Aphelios died because Zed got on it very quickly. There are some cool comps where Zed is like a secondary carry. If you're trying to primary carry Zed, you are going to lose the game. Don't do that. At least day 1 of PBE, just warning you. But secondary, he's very good and will kill key targets. So, and then he's also Cypher. He's the 4 cost Cypher that activates 5-piece. Very important for Cypher. So he'll be a high demand champion as well. But yeah, so like I said, let us know how you like this 4 cost base. And then we have the 5 costs. You know, I know I'm biased, but like I think this is one of the best batches of 5 costs we've had in quite some time. This is a very good batch of 5 costs. Some of this you've already seen from like the dev drop and things like that, so I'll try to go quick. But Aurora, AP user, she will bring somebody in from the backline on the bench, and then she will keep fighting from the bench until that person dies. Now your instinct might be to have her bring in someone like Zac or Garen, who's a threat. But the thing to note is Aurora also gives the person she brings in a ton of attack speed that scales with AP. So if you have a fully decked out Aurora, the actual best unit we found to bring in is Urgot, and I'll explain why later. But consider other backline options as well. You could bring in like a second Zaya if you're playing Anima Squad, or like a second Misfortune if you're playing Dynamo. But yeah, she's pretty cool. I'm gonna skip Garen for a second. Kobuko, Cyber Boss Bruiser, pretty flexible, good tank. Uses AP, so you're gonna want like JG on him. JG Warmogs can actually work well. JG Crown Guard, kind of like Rumble in that regard. But you definitely want 2 Cyber Boss when you're playing him. His spell gets so much better. It goes from 1 hex AoE to 2 hex AoE. So make sure you're running 2 Cyber Boss. Pairs very well with Ziggs, who's a strategist who can flex in. But can also go 4 Cyber Boss if you want. But you definitely need at least 2. Renekton, he's Divinicorp, which means he just gives your team attack speed for playing him. He's Bastion, which makes him pretty flexible as well. You can get that 2 Bastion in. Pairs really well with Sejuani. You're going to see a lot of late game boards with Renekton and Sejuani on them. That'll be pretty common. But his Overlord trait lets him eat somebody behind him, kind of like Hunger for Power, the anomaly, and take 40% of their health and AD and make himself stronger. This works really well if you have, like, let's say a Zed. You have a Zed with a bunch of items, Renekton eats them, the Zed heals back up with BT, and you have a very powerful Renekton. So, and Renekton's also interesting in that he's like common item is like Ginsu's, hilariously enough. He gains a ton of attack speed with his spell, you know, so he's not somebody that needs like a Titans per se. But it'll be interesting to see how people optimize Renekton builds. He's also very good with range, so like if you've got RFC or a rapid fire emblem, he can be pretty good. Samira, pretty safe, very splashy spell, but she has, you know, Shojin, i.e. you want her to cast that spell as quick as she can and then have it do a lot of damage. So pretty standard AoE AD caster. Urgot. Urgot is a Ginsu's user. So this is weird. He's a backline Ginsu's user for range. You're going to see a lot of Urgots in late game comps because what he does is he sort of has a passive where once he casts a spell, he can shoot all over the place. And then if someone gets low, he can chain them in and execute them. And if he executes them, you can sometimes drop gold or items. And what's interesting is like an itemless Urgot is very good to throw in if you can afford it, because you might just start generating stuff. And then if you have items, he can do a lot of power. He's also Executioner, which means he has built-in crit. So Urgot, definitely not something to sleep on. Viego, admittedly going to PBE, Viego might be a little weak, but who knows, you'll make him work. He does his AoE slam, so you're going to want stuff like BT, JG, but his Soul Killer also gives him an extra unit on your board based on who you killed last fight, with a recommended item on them, so just a little extra army power, so yeah. All right, and then the best two, I think these are the really exciting two. Zach starts off not actually that strong, so if you get him too late, it's not that great. But as you do your roll down, once you buy Zach, you'll see little pop-ups that are blobs. Make sure you click those. Every blob you get is some health and some AP. And, you know, we've had games where you get like 50 or 70 blobs, and all of a sudden Zach is a beast. So very, very good. He's going to want stuff like Warmogs. You can put stuff like Spark on him. He's pretty tanky. It's interesting, if you look at the 5-cost melee champions, you have Kobuko, who's like your AP bruiser, Zach, who's like your HP tank, Renekton, who's like your attack speed bruiser, and then Garen, who is going to be your AD bruiser. Here's your Sterix, BT, Titans, IE, that kind of thing. But Garen's ability, God of the Net, is so cool. You play him, you keep him on your board, and every few turns you're going to get a mod, which will allow you to add a trait to somebody. Now, it doesn't give you a +1. So let's say, for example, I have Aurora and Garen, and I get a Dynamo mod. I can turn Garen into a Dynamo also. I will not have 2 Dynamo, but let's say I had 4 Dynamo active. Now Garen is benefiting from that trait as well. And so it's pretty cool. You can make some really cool combinations. One of the best ones I've seen is you're playing like a reroll Kog'Maw Twisted Fate build with Boombots, and then all of a sudden you get a Boombot mod, and now Twisted Fate is also a Boombot throwing missiles as well. So pretty fun combinations. Be on the lookout for Garen. Yeah, he's pretty cool. And those are the champions. Now, it's kind of weird to talk about the champions without the context of their traits. You heard me kind of talk about some of them there. Let's dig into the traits. Divinicorp, as I mentioned, kind of like Guild in the past. It's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And each one gives a different stat. Morgana AP, Rost Armor and MR, Senna AD, Gragas HP, Vex is going to be giving a crit, Renekton attack speed, and the emblem will be giving Omnivamp. And the more you have, the better that bonus is. So if you have them all, the trait is giving like 18% AP, 12, you know, tons of stats. So pretty cool, very flexible. It's a good trait. It's back. Syndicate. This is the one where there's only 5 units. So 7-piece is kind of like 6 artillerists on live. It's like if you hit the 7-piece, it's not quite prismatic, but it's insanely good. Like this is a very good trait. The 3-piece you're going to see a lot of. The 3-piece is really good. You pay something like Braum plus Darius plus MF and put the hat on MF. The hat's going to give MF even more power in her ult. And you're going to be able to get like 2 Vanguard and 2 Bruiser in, no problem. Or you can play like reroll with TF and Darius and Shaco. Maybe put the hat on TF, play around, you know, that. Or obviously Shaco. So it's really who you want to kind of be the kingpin. And then if you're willing to run 5, you're going to be able to have 2 kingpins. So you could like run 5 and play like Darius and TF, you know, and have 1 tank to keep your TF alive. So cool combinations there. I'm sure people will figure out which ones are the best and the worst. So yeah. All right, Nitro. If you're a reroll player, Nitro's the comp for you. That being said, you can still play it early without rerolling it and then pivot out of it. It's a very good tempo as well if you hit it early. But basically, Shyvana's a 2-cost, Elise is a 3-cost, Nidalee is a 1-cost, and Kindred's a 1-cost. If you put 3 of them in, you're going to start generating Chrome. And this is kind of like Trainer way back in set 7. But the higher the star level you are, the more Chrome you get. And the longer you run it, the bigger your summon gets. So you want to get 4 in pretty quick. You want to 3-star things, generate lots of Chrome. And once you hit 200, it becomes the T-Hex, which is pretty cool. So it's a neat summon trait. Pairs well. Shyvana's pretty tanky. Yeah. Boombot. This one's interesting. In development, we've struggled to make it work sometimes, or it's been overpowered other times. But basically, it's a pretty simple just get more damage trait. The more damage you do, you fire bonus missiles that deal extra damage. Pretty simple. That being said, some of the damage you take as you tank can contribute to this as well. So like, let's say you have a Skarner 3 with like 6 Vanguard and a ton of tank items. He'll actually be firing a bunch of missiles, just from tanking, because 8% of the damage taken pre-mitigation will contribute to that as well. So he can fire some missiles. And we've seen some Skarners do some big damage, or even some Cho'Gaths. If you get like that 6 Bruiser Cho'Gath with some Boombot going on, that can do some big damage as well. So yeah, otherwise Kog'Maw reroll is also an option here. So it's fun. Anima Squad. Anima Squad is one of our big verticals. Pretty simple. Emblems are good with this, obviously, but it does have Leona as a tank. It's got Xayah as a damage dealer. You can hit the 7-piece without needing the 5 cost, things like that. Now, here's the thing with Anima Squad. What's going to happen is when you first put in 3, you're going to see a choice of 2 weapons, and you're going to be like, I don't know what to pick. Our intention is that it doesn't matter what you pick. They're both going to do about the same amount of damage. The one thing to consider is, like, if you have an Even Shroud, pick the physical damage. If you have a Spark, pick the magic damage. If you know you're playing Yuumi reroll and you're going to build Spark, pick the magic damage. If you know you're going to play Xayah carry later and build a Last Whisper, build the physical damage. You know, that's really all you have to think about. Otherwise, trust that it does about the same damage. I'm sure later Challenger players will be like, no, this one's slightly better, pick this one. And if it is, we'll adjust. But the choices are mostly there to be fun and like, cool, you get some bonus damage. It's almost like a summon trait in that regard, where you're just like happy to get extra bonus damage. All right. Golden Ox is probably the weirdest and hardest trait to play. And you'll see probably the most changes on PBE as we adjusted a little bit. Golden Ox is weird. You look at this and it's like you put in 4 Golden Ox and you only get 20% damage amp and a 40% chance to drop gold. On paper, as a 4-piece, that's pretty weak. That's kind of below our typical frameworks. But what happens is every turn, it starts at 8 gold. And as you spend gold for leveling or rerolls, and rerolls count as extra, it'll go, hey, cool, you spent 8 gold this turn, thank you, our tree grows, and your trait gets more powerful. So then the next turn, if you spend 12 gold, same thing, it'll keep stacking. And their goal is to sort of like grow this Golden Ox tree as big as you can. A good game, you might have this up to like 44, 48. And what that does is it increases the damage amp. So for example, at 6-piece, it says 22%. But if you get that tree up to like 56 or 60, that damage amp actually gets closer to like 70, 80 damage. It gets pretty insane later. So you have to like spend your gold in the right way to make the trait more powerful. It's very interesting. So if you find like, oops, I accidentally spent a bunch of gold this turn and now next turn I can't, the trait won't be as strong. So pretty complicated to use, but if you do it, it's really satisfying. Indications you should play this: an early Graves. You could play around Graves reroll or just an early Graves in general. If you're like level 5 and you find an early Annie or an early Aphelios, that's another time to maybe get into the 4-piece. Or get an early emblem. Early emblem's also another time where you should really consider this. Getting the 4-piece early can get a bunch of gold. So I'll be interested to see how this one lands on PBE. This is the one I'm like the most like, let's see, but it's also the most unique, and so it could be the most fun. So, all right, Cypher. This is my personal favorite. Shocking. Mort likes the high risk trait here. Cypher is I would call it a basic but fun high risk trait. It's basic in the sense that it works kind of like what you'd expect. Every kill generates some intel. Every time you lose, that generates some intel. And if you keep losing in a row, that generates intel. So going on a 10-loss streak will generate a ton of intel. The more of the trait you have in, the more intel you get. So if you have like 5 Cypher on 2-5, you're going to be able to generate a lot of intel. Great. You want to generate lots of intel. Now at 3-3, what'll happen is, let's say you have 90 intel. At 3-3, an armory will appear, and it'll go, do you want an item component or keep going? If you take the item component, you're done. Cypher can't do anything else, and it just converts into AD and AP. So now you have 25% AD and AP. The trait has been converted. And now you can take that item component, pivot out of it. And so for those of you that remember like Underground, I think there will be a lot of play where you like play Cypher from 3-2 to 3-7, get 2 components and then get out. Or a common one I've been trying in some of our playtests is like, hold the Cypher units, don't put them in till stage 4, and then 4-1 to 4-7, generate like 200 or 300 intel, walk away with 4 components, and pivot out of it into a completely different comp. So there's a lot of skill expression in how you can play this, but you can also play it as like a standard fortune trait where you hit it on 2-1, keep leveling up, and get a ton of intel, and get a crazy cash out on like 4-3. So it's just all about how much intel you can generate. Now, the thing to note here is we went pretty crazy with some of these cash outs. Not like overpowered, but just like fun. For example, one of the cash outs that's like pretty early, but I like, is you get a 2-star Mundo, a 2-star Alistar, a Frying Pan, a 2-star Alistar, and a 2-star Mundo. It's kind of a weird cash out. It's just like, you know, 12 gold and a Frying Pan. But like, let's say you've got a Mundo lying around, all of a sudden it's 2-star. And so it's like, oh, that's kind of a neat cash out. Should I take that? There's a bunch of really cool cash outs in this trait. So let us know what you think of them. We can always add more, or if you don't like certain ones. But like I said, we're also shifting on, like, if we're talking about power, we know we're shipping it a tiny strong. I would imagine challenger players are going to call it broken, but we also want it to be fun. So let us know what you think. All right, Cyber Boss. Cyber Boss is a 2-3-4. The 3-piece, by the way, here, it used to just be a 2-4. The 3 was just to make it a little easier to play. 3 should not be a big upgrade. It should just like help ease you into the 4 if you're considering it. But the general idea here is if you have 2 Cyber Bosses, or 3, you get to pick one of them, and by one, it's not pick like the hats in Syndicate, it's just the strongest. The strongest one is your Cyber Boss. They're going to gain extra health and AP, fine, but more importantly, their ability is going to be larger. For example, Poppy does the shield throw she's done before that hits one target, but if Poppy's the Cyber Boss, it hits an AoE. And so, same with Veigar. Veigar's spell becomes AoE. Ziggs's bomb becomes a larger AoE. We talked about Kobuko, the AoE size getting bigger. So being a Cyber Boss means larger spells. This is why if you're ever playing one of these carries, you absolutely need 2 Cyber Boss, right? Like 5 strategists, 2 Cyber Boss Ziggs. Good comp, and Ziggs will do a lot of work. If you try to play 5 strategists without Cyber Boss, Ziggs is kind of bad. So you definitely want Cyber Boss in if you're playing one of these carries. All right, Exotech, one of our other big verticals here. If you've played Ink Shadow, it's very similar to Ink Shadow. At the start of the game, 3 of the 7 possible items will be there. You'll see. So this game, like we got Repulsor Lantern, Pulse Stabilizer, and Hollow Bow. And you play more of the trait, you get some health, you get some attack speed, and you get one of these items. So pretty common. That being said, the items are all based around one character, so they have like a very clear like primary user. For example, Pulse Stabilizer, primary user Jhin, but can totally work on Zeri as well. And so a bunch of options here. Play around that. You've seen this before, but it's done in a cool way. These items are fun. Repulsor Lantern's pretty cool, you know. So there's 7 items in all. Try them out. Street Demon. This is very similar to KDA before, where based on whatever game you're in, there's going to be a pattern of hexes you can stand in. But there's some key differences this time. First off, as soon as you put in 3 Street Demon, you will see all your hexes. But you'll also notice there are 4 special hexes. Those special hexes give you 50% more stats. So you can choose key units to be in those hexes and get even more power. And then, you know, so you can play 3 Street Demon, power up your team, or you can go 7 and get that to be pretty powerful. There's even some cool 5 Street Demon comps where you play around Jinx and Rengar that can do very well. Now, if you're trying to teach somebody new the game, Street Demon is probably the trait you want to teach them. Street Demon has a lot of trait pairs built within it. It has Zyra and Brand are both techie. It has Echo and Nico, who are both strategist. So, like, once you put the 7-piece together, you kind of already have a 7 Street Demon, 2 techie, 2 strategist comp, which is really nice and easy to play. So if you're looking for like your beginner origin to teach your friends, Street Demon, pretty good. Okay, then we move into classes. I'm going to go through these quick unless there's something new. Bastion, pretty similar. They gain armor and MR. First 10 seconds, they're even tankier. Team gains some armor and MR. So, yeah. 6-piece will make your whole team tankier. So, yeah. Slayer gives your team AD. This is an AD trait, so there's no, no AP users in Slayer. They also get some Omnivamp. The interesting twist here this time is that if they overheal, it'll heal the lowest percent Slayer for 50% of the amount. So let's say you have a Vayne 3, and she does 1,000 damage at full health, and that would heal 150 with 2 Slayer in or 4 Slayer in. That means 75 healing heading towards your tank, which isn't a lot. I'm not going to say it's a ton, but it is nice that like the healing does matter on those backline carries like Senna and Vayne. So kind of cool. Dynamo, pretty easy here. Your team gains mana, Dynamos gain more. So if you want to run like Morgana plus Jhin plus MF plus Aurora to get MF casting as quick as possible, that's a pretty good comp. Dynamo we've seen be pretty strong if you go 4-piece, so Dynamo's kind of fun. Now, Amp is a weird one. Amp is a weird class. This is something we're trying that's new, where Amp is literally just a new stat. We have a new stat that's called Amp, and Amp does different things to the champions based on what they have. For example, Nidalee, her spell is she hits the main target, and then a lightning bolt jumps to 2 other targets, +1 per amp. So if you're running 5 amp, and you have a Nidalee, her swipe, it says gain 4 amp here, her swipe will hit 6 targets, which is kind of neat. Annie's kind of similar. She shoots like 3 bolts plus another bolt per amp. Samira will fire extra bullets. Yumi's kind of the most dull one. She's just gaining mana regen per amp, but that'll help her cast pretty quick. Nefiri throws more dogs per amp. And why this matters is this is another axis of scaling, right? If you look at a champion like Annie, normally you would have AP and crit and damage amp, and those 3 would be multiplicative of each other. But now you also have number of bolts. And so amp champions at their peak can actually do some pretty insane damage if they're like perfectly itemized. A 5 amp Annie with blue buff, JG, guard breaker, and like that's gonna do some pretty nutty things. So kind of neat. Now there is no amp emblem, by the way, as you can see here. Techie, this is our standard AP trait. It's an 8-piece, goes all the way up. Very similar to the last AP trait, gain some AP. One thing to note is they do have already at 2-piece, they have the built-in thing that makes their abilities make the enemy do less damage for 3 seconds. That goes up to 18% at 8. Now you might be wondering, didn't we just go through this with sorcerers? Why do you have 8 sorcerer here when, last set we had to go down to 6? Last set only had 7 sorcerers, and 8-piece was weird and didn't have many tanks. This time we have Shyvana, we've got Mordekaiser, who are solid tanks, we've got Fiddlesticks to help with the front line. We actually feel pretty confident that 8 can work pretty well here. And because there's 8 champions, we don't have to like balance it as if it was some sort of chase trait. It's just a standard 8-piece trait that you can play. So let us know if it doesn't work, but this time we're feeling, because the trait structure is different, that's why you're seeing 8 techie here and not 6, but we did not add a 10 techie. So Vanguard, pretty simple. They gain a shield at the start of combat. They're more durable when they have shields up. They gain another shield at 50% health. 4 Vanguard early with like a Warmogs, very strong here. Vanguards are just really good front lines. I think Vanguards are like the best stage 2 and 3 front line by a pretty significant margin. Vi is very good. Ross gives extra utility. Skarner's not bad. And then even like Jarvan's actually really tanky. So Bruisers are back. Don't need to go into this. It's health. They like health. Mundo really likes health. Cho'Gath really likes health. All of them have a lot of them have HP scalers. Gragas heals more the more health he has. Kobuko heals more and has a bigger shield the more health he has. These guys like health. If you like health. And then rapid fire. Rapid fire is they gain attack speed. You're going to see a lot of 2 rapid fire comps with like Zeri and things like that. 4, a little harder to play. 6, pretty uncommon. I don't think you're going to see a lot of 6 rapid fire. It can work. I've pulled it off with like Draven 3, Zeri 2, and a really good front line, but it's hard. So 6 rapid fire, not as plentiful. So, okay. Marksman, it's only a 2-4 this time. We're not even going to bait you into trying to play the 6 because you really shouldn't. Unlike rapid fire, which we've seen work, 6 Marksman was just not a thing. So the way Marksman work is pretty simple. They gain AD. 8 seconds later, they gain more AD. And if you're running 4 of them, they keep gaining even more AD. So it's just a ramping AD trait. Executioner's back. They gain some crit. They gain some crit damage. At 5-piece, they gain some durability. But what's nice here is if the target's health is below 30%, the bonus critical strike damage is doubled. So you can do some pretty big crits and vamp off that with things like Rengar here. I like 5 Executioner Vex comps. Those are pretty fun. Strategist is back. If you're in the front row, you're going to gain durability. If you're in the back row, you're going to gain damage amp. Now, Strategist applies to the entire team. So, for example, if you put in 3 Strategists, your whole team is getting either the damage amp or the durability. The Strategists gain triple, though, so it's much better for the Strategist. So, if you're a 5 Strategist Ziggs on the back line, you're getting 60% damage amp. That's pretty good. This trait's pretty solid. You're going to see a lot of Strategists. And like I said, both Echo and Nico are Street Demon. So if you're playing Strategist, you're probably playing at least 3 Street Demon, which is going to give you the extra power from their hexes. So, yeah, because of that trait twin, you're going to see a lot of connection points there. So, and that's it. I think that's it for the champs and traits. Still lots more to go through, though. First off, one big change here. Class emblems, they're still back. Most of them build out of pans. But class emblems are boring, man. You got a Sentinel emblem on live, and you're like, okay, that's fine. You didn't really care who you put it on. It's just really +1 trait. We wanted to make you look at these items and go, ooh, but who I put them on is really interesting. So all the class emblems have a transformative element to them. For example, Rapid Fire emblem gets +2 range. Simple. Or Executioner emblem says every time you critical strike, you ignore some of the target's armor and MR. Okay, those ones are pretty straightforward, but then you get some ones where you can cook. Bruiser emblem, for every 180 max health, deal 1% bonus damage as magic damage. So I want you to imagine you play like 6 Bruiser, but maybe you put in a Rengar, and you put a Bruiser emblem on Rengar, who's now dealing bonus magic damage, and before a challenger player mocks me like, I'm not saying Bruiser Rengar is S tier. I'm just giving an example of a silly fun thing you could try. That was not me saying Bruiser Rengar is good. But like the cool things here, Slayer emblem, the healing they receive is increased by 25%. So if it's a champion with built-in healing, you can do some cool things there. Bastion emblem is going to convert their armor and MR into AP. So imagine if you wanted to do a techie comp with 6 Bastion and increase the AP on your backline. Pretty cool. Excuse me. Marksman emblem is going to help reduce the armor by 1. Vanguard emblem, the holder gains 150 max health whenever they gain a shield. So if you have a champion that has a built-in shield already, and you can stack up more health and get bigger shields, this one's pretty cool. It's pretty hard to pull off, but there's a world where like a 6 Vanguard Cho'Gath can do some silly things here. Techie emblem, they get more AP from all sources, so that one's kind of neat. Dynamo emblem, on cast gain 1% damage amp per 10 mana spent. So put this on somebody with a really, decent, someone who's casting like crazy, they can ramp up that damage amp. And then Strategist emblem is kind of the most unique one here. The holder gains the Strategist trait and 50% of the other bonus. So you put them in the front line, they get the backline damage as well. This one I actually have seen Strategist Rengar do very well, because you can put Strategist Rengar in like the front line, and he's really, really tanky, and he gets some of the damage amp from the back line. So kind of cool. So yeah. All right, encounters. Encounters are back. I know some of you are sad that we're not switching back to portals. Our logic still stands here. That being said, we're trying to only stick with the fun ones, so a lot of the more frustrating ones you saw from the previous set are gone, with the exception of if you're somebody who doesn't like trainer golems. Not going to please you here, but Golden Gala, Prismatic Party, Prismatic Opener, Prismatic Finale, Component Anvils, which hilariously enough is still Vi. I love that that's still Vi. Artifact Anvil, Scuttle Puddle, Crabbrave, Loot Subscription, Trainer Golems, and Gold Sub are the ones that are returning. Now, you might notice this does not add up to 100%. That's because there's other ones. But the other ones involve our set mechanic, which we do need to talk about. The set mechanic is called hacks. And what hacks are is sometimes, around 2 to 3, occasionally 4 times per game, you're going to get hacked and things are going to change. Now, if you're going, these sound a lot like encounters. In some respects, they are. In some respects, they are. But they're encounters with like a lot of learnings and a lot of new things that we are confident in that will be a very positive experience. Encounters was a lot more of a mishmash of things that we thought would like radically change the game and open up new puzzles. That is not what hacks is. Hacks, for the most part, and if we're anywhere wrong, we will take them out, are generally meant to be small bonuses or new puzzles to think about that generally don't change the game that dramatically. So let's talk about the type of hacks you can see. Well, the first one is opening hacks. During your opening encounter, there's a chance you will get hacked, and instead of one of the champions, you'll see something else. One of the more common ones is just, hey, FYI, there's going to be an extra augment. An example here is you'll see like the augment prop sword there, and it'll say there's going to be an extra augment at the end of stage 3. What that means is instead of 3 augments, you're going to get a 4th augment. You're going to get a 4th augment at 3-7. Cool. Players like augments. It doesn't change the other rounds. There's just going to be a 4th augment round. Cool. Another example is Aurelian Soul, which I think won't be enabled day 1 on PBE, but it's still coming, is a treasure armory, where on 4-7, instead of your normal PBE round, you'll get a treasure armory that can include a lot of different things, including augments, which is really interesting. I love this one because you can have an armory that's like, do you want a silver augment and a spatula and 20 gold? Or do you want this gold augment, and it tells you which augment, by the way, and 2 gold and a component, and it's like, ooh, these are interesting choices. Other ones here, a Zir, which will just accelerate the augments. This basically, and this is an encounter we learned from, we know you guys like, is like, instead of 2-1, 3-2, and 4-2, it'll shift them forward, so maybe it's like 2-1, 2-5, 3-1. So you just get your augments earlier. Egg will give you a hacked egg that allows you to get some bonus loot later. Gold. Okay, the last 3, though, I will say, give us your feedback on these last 3. I would call these the ones we want to like see your guys' opinion on the most. Lucky shops, basically once per stage, so like 2-3, 3-5, and 4-3. What'll happen is your first shop will just be like essentially like a loaded dice shop. It's like, here's some units you need, have fun. 2-star shops, I know a lot of people are comparing this to Chosen, but it's not really like Chosen because you can't only just have one. It'll just be like, there's a 2-star in a shop, there's another 2-star, and it can help give you direction. It can help reroll comps, but also if you power level, like I had a game where at level 9, I just hit a 2-star Garen, and it's like, sweet. And then finally, the Golem Armory. This one's interesting, although apparently I can't spell Golem, and I put Goem. But the Golem Armory is at 4-7, I believe. It might be 4-7 or 4-1. You have a choice between a tank golem, a backline golem, or a gold golem, and you can pick one to add to your team. So these are definitely the more weird opening encounters. Like I said, generally pretty confident in all of them, maybe except the last 3. So do give us your feedback on those last 3, but this could be one of your 3 hacks for the game. Another very common type of hack is an augment hack. And with the augment hacks, there's really 2 types. The first one is a category augment. And what'll happen is, in the left augment, you will see this whole special art here, and you can see it on the screen where it says formation. It's got this whole custom art, and that means your rerolls will go up to 3 for that slot, so you'll have extra rerolls, and you know it's going to be a formation augment, or an econ augment, or an item augment. In addition, the hackers would really like you to take it, so they will also bribe you with a little gold. So you can see here, there's BRB, there's capacitor, but if I take mentorship, I also get 3 more gold. And so these hacked augments are the hacker's way of saying, I'm helping you out, here's a category you're gonna know about, and it's pretty cool. So generally, when this happens, you're probably gonna take one from that category, and you will have 3 extra rerolls to make sure you find something you like, but you don't have to. That's totally your choice. Now, of these categories, build around chaos, econ, items, trait, combat, pretty straightforward. But the one that we do want to talk about here is black market. Black market, if it's black market, it will always be prismatic. There are only prismatic black market augments. But these are going to be augments that are spicy, that like from a balance perspective, we pulled for good reason, but the hackers were like, screw it. Have Think Fast, have Cruel Pact, have Blue Battery. I don't care. Now again, if you get a black market augment, everyone does. So it's going to be one of those games. But they're back. Enjoy them. Enjoy them while you can. They won't be sticking around after this. The other one, and this is the one I love this one, is what'll happen is you will be presented with a choice of choose one or two. So for example, in this screenshot, it's do you want a prismatic augment or do you want 2 gold augments? Do you want Bulky Buddies 3 or Long Distance Pals and Crown's Will? This is such a cool thing for TFT because it asks you to make an evaluation in a way you've never done before. Even if there were augment stats, which they're not coming back, how would you evaluate, you know, a really good prismatic versus 2 good golds? It's an interesting decision. So we want you to kind of adapt to this and think about it. Now you'll notice here we also have a gold balance lever as well. You can see the Bulky Buddies has 6 gold. So if we find that like too many people are taking the 2 golds or the prismatic, we can adjust. That being said, from our testing, it's pretty even. We think it's at a good spot. But good luck. And generally, these aren't like pre-done combos, by the way. This is just like 2 gold augments. Just like the normal augment system. That's it. So have fun with that. And then the last bit is the other hacks. My personal favorite, I love it when this one happens, is the gold split armory. Randomly in the game, the most common one, it'll say gain 10 gold or split 30 gold with other splitters. And you have to make a choice. Do you just want 10 gold, no problem? Or do you want to split? And so let's say 4 people choose split when it says 10 and 30. Well, those 4 people will get 7 gold each. It always rounds down. And so it's like, oops, you lost 3 gold because you were greedy and chose split. But if 7 people choose 10 and 1 person chooses 30, enjoy your 30 gold. So it's a cool little mental game. We'll have to see how it plays out, but I love it when it happens. And generally for the most part, it usually is about what you'd expect, where it's pretty even. But occasionally you get a crazy game where someone got lucky and was able to read the room, or other games where like 7 people split and you're like, you guys are idiots, you know? So carousel hacks are back, where there can be extra stuff on the carousel, or instead of champions, you'll see anvils. So you can see component anvils, you can see extra components, training dummies, duplicators, and then in the late game only, you can even see things like completed items or artifact anvils, things like that. And then the last hack that you can be on the lookout for is you kill a PBE mob, and some of you may have seen this on live already, but instead of a normal orb, you get a hacked orb, a hacked green orb. And inside of them are pretty interesting things. You can get health, so everyone gets health back. You can get unstable components. So imagine you get 2 components that have built-in Pandoras and are constantly changing to make sure you get your best in slot. You can get a hacked egg, which is like a mini golden egg that everyone gets. And then if you lose, it opens faster. It's actually the opposite. So it comes out 9 turns, but every turn you lose, it takes 2 off the counter. And then finally, just like lots of, like, you can open one and all of a sudden there's just like 8 small orbs inside that each contain gold, and you get a bunch of gold out of it. So yeah, these are just small bonuses that kind of shift up the game a bit, or ask you to think about new challenges in new ways. Generally, like I said, we're trying to make set mechanics that don't define the games, but rather are just a small +1 to the game, and we think a lot of these are. We think a lot of these are a lot of fun. I love the gold split armories. I love the 1v2 choice. But this is our set mechanic, so a lot of fun. All right, other changes to run through here so you know. Level 8 and level 9, we are upping the 4 cost odds at 8 and the 5 cost odds at 9. If you go to level 9, you want 5 costs. You should get them. If you go to level 8, you want 4 costs. You should get them. Pretty simple. All right, last is augments. We have a lot to go through on augments. This time, we didn't do a big augment refresh. You're not going to see a whole new batch of augments. A lot of them are still around. That being said, we did get rid of some for various reasons. You can see the removed ones here: angered issues, powered shields, at what cost, power up, reroll transfer, beggars can be choosers, unleash the beast, cooking pot, built different, and ghosts of friends past. And then we re-added underdogs, cybernetic implants 1 and 2 from the past. Now, like I said, for a lot of these, they're different reasons. For example, Power Up doesn't really interact with our hack system very well. We like the Augment. It'll be back, but it doesn't really interact well with the hack system. Beggars Can Be Choosers, same thing. Having 6 rerolls in a 1v2 gets really weird, causes problems. So things like that. Cooking Pot. Cooking Pot, unfortunately, just synergizes way too well with exactly Mundo. Though that one we may just give up anyway and let you have it back. We're still debating that one. Unleash the Beast, we're just kind of like ready for a break from it. Ghost of Friend Past was just way too difficult to play. So, stuff like that. Alright, then we have another change. This is one that I'm a little sad to make this change, but it's still important to do for balance. If you looked at like our crests and crowns, like let's say you have Street Demon Crest. On 2-1, Street Demon Crest would give you, you know, the emblem and a champion. And it would be pretty balanced. If you were, again, to look at augment stats, it might be like a 4.5 or a 4.4. No problem. Because taking it on 2-1 has some inherent risks to it. But then you would get to 3-2 and 4-2, and they would only appear if you're already in that trait. So like on live, Enforcer Emblem only appears if you already have like 4+ Enforcer and 4-2. But if you're in that position, getting an emblem is amazing. Like, frankly, overpowered. And so it's finally time to kind of put the kibosh on that like just getting an overpowered augment because you're playing a vertical trait at 3-2 and 4-2 isn't really okay. So what does that mean? Crests and crowns, as you know them, will still appear on 2-1. No problem. But they will not appear at 3-2 and 4-2. Instead, this is where circlets will appear. Circlets are only prismatic. And so, like, let's say you're playing vertical Street Demon, and you are, you know, you want the circlet on 4-2. The circlet will appear, and all it says is gain a Street Demon emblem, which is clearly weaker than it was before, but that's about the power level it should be at 4-2, because it could help you get to 10 Street Demon, right? If you have a Wandering Trainer opener, we don't need games being decided off a single lucky gold augment. So this is a bit of a nerf to people who like to chase those prismatics. I understand that, but from a balance perspective, it's kind of necessary. So that's what we're doing. But you can still go, you know, branching out on 2-1 into a circlet on 4-2 into 10 Street Demon. You know, it's still possible. It's just harder. As far as new augments, there are new trait augments. Each trait has either 1 or 2. I'm not going to go through all these. The various sites out there have it. You can pause the video and read through all of these. I'll talk about any that are, I think, pretty exciting. Hunter Killer Missile, I think, is like... If people are going to complain about one augment on the first day, I think it's Hunter Killer Missile. This thing is nuts. Every 10 missiles you fire, you get a giant missile, and that giant missile can just, like, fly towards backliners. I think this thing is nutty. High score with Cyber Boss is pretty fun. If you liked 8-bit in set 10, basically high score gives your Cyber Bosses 8-bit, which is kind of cool. And the final checkpoint guarantees you a Kabuko. So it's kind of like helps you get into the trait and top the trait out, which is fun. Oh, I have to talk about Hostile Takeover. Cypher, as I said, is a lost streak trait. You want to lose to gain intel. However, if you take Hostile Takeover, losing now sucks, streaks now suck, but killing is really good. So TLDR here, Hostile Takeover turns Cypher into a win streak trait. It becomes a win streak fortune, which we've never shipped, but if you want to do it and try to run away with the game, it can be pretty exciting. And to help you, you get 50% of the combat bonus of the trait now. So it's not even just like neutral, it buffs your units and helps you get kills, which is kind of cool. So I really like that one. So yeah. Oh, and Trial Run for Exotech, where you get a Golem, and then if you're willing to run 7 Exotech, the Golem has 3 Exotech items on it, which is kind of cool. So yeah. And then here's the second page. Again, more stuff here. I'm not going to go over all of them. Polished Chrome is going to be very popular. If you're a Nitro player, you are going to love Polished Chrome. Same with Spare Parts. Both of these are very popular. Again, new players who love the reroll comps, Nitro is a good reroll comp. Both of these augments lean into that really, really well. That's pretty fun. Ooh, Street Demon. Both of these are really cool too. Street Demon Freestyling. I really like this one. Street Demons that don't start in a tagged hex, you can add new hexes, your goal being to fill the board. Once the board is full, you can position wherever you want, and you gain 30 gold. So Kind of a neat little mini game to like try to fill the board with Street Demon hexes. That's a fun one. Cool. And then here's all the black market augments, if you were curious. These are all the ones that have come back. Some of them technically aren't back, or they're pretty different because we had to make them prismatic level power. So they're not exactly the same. For example, like shock treatment is, you know, quite a bit more powerful because it's a prismatic. Cruel Pact is back, Cursed Crown, stuff like that. Dominance, for example, is way different. Pirates is like technically not an augment, but it's back and as like the trait and just gains a lot of cool stuff here. Yeah, Titanic Strength can do really cool things with like Cho'Gath and Mundo. Wise Spending. Yeah, keep an eye on these, but lots of black market augments. All right, some hero augments here. Rost, this one's nutty. Turns Rost back into Kane, and he becomes kind of like the old 5-cost Kane where he just like dashes around and kills people. Silas has one, Poppy has one, Jax has one, and Vi has one. There's our 1-cost ones. And then we actually have a 3-cost one here, which is Gragas. This one's pretty weird, but if you want to play Gragas Hero Augment, and as you see, it can show up on 2-1 this time. So unlike Rennie that could only show up on 3-2, we're going to let you get the Gragas Hero Augment on 2-1. But yeah, so some fun hero augments to play with. Now, last thing to talk about here is we have 4 augments sometimes now. And because of that, we did need to deflate throughout the game. So with the existing augments, we did do a deflation pass of any of the augments we thought were like not overperforming, but just like good to great, just to try to bring things down. Because when you have 4 augments, the multiplicative total power can get really high. And so this was kind of necessary and was good to just generally sort of do a nice deflation anyway, which is healthy for the game to sort of make sure we're not constantly power creeping ourselves. So, running through it real quick here. Branching Out no longer gains a Reforger on 2-1, but there's now a Branching Out Plus that does grant a Reforger on 3-2. Dumbify, a little bit of less health per stage. Item Collector no longer grants health, just AD and AP. Glass Cannon, a little bit less damage amp. Lineup, less resistances. One for all, less damage amp. Over Encumbered, you're going to have less item components. It's only going to be 2 item components instead of 3. Mentorship, a little less power. Support Mining takes longer. Superstars, less damage amp. Table Scraps, only 2 item components. On the gold side, Bad Luck Protection, a little less power. Crown Guarded, a little less. Epoch, less SP per stage. Inspiring Epitaph, going to be banned on 2-1 because it was bad. And then less attack speed. Glass Cannon, less damage amp. Golemify, a little less total health here. Heroic Grab Bag, a little less gold, but we did, so Heroic Grab Bag actually kind of gets a fix here. 2-1, it's going to get nerfed because it's already good there. 3-2, it's going to stay the same, but now there's a Heroic Grab Bag Plus. And then 4-2, it's actually going to get buffed. There's a Heroic Grab Bag Plus Plus. Little Buddies nerf, Mace's Will nerf. Magic Roll, slight buff here. If you get the quadruple component, we'll give you a remover. Monoflow nerf, Mentorship nerf, No Scout, No Pivot nerf. One for all nerf. Overheal nerf, Shop Glitch, 1 less reroll. Spear's Will nerf, Starry Night nerf. This is a big one. You'll notice here in particular, we didn't nerf it at level 6, but at level 3, 4, and 5, it's getting nerfed. And at level 7, 8, and 9, we're actually buffing it. The intention of this augment was meant to be like a go to 7, go to 8, and then find some 2 stars. So if you're willing to do that, you can get more in the late game. That being said, you can just stay at level 6 and use it like you did before. That's not changing, but it is going to be nerfed at 3, 4, and 5. Superstars nerfed, Thorn-Plated Armor nerfed, Tower Defense, slight nerf here to the damage. Warpath actually buffed. I like this buff. Warpath's a fun augment, but no one's really taking it. That being said, you do have to do more damage, so it does take longer to proc. So in a way, it could be considered a nerf, but you do get a free 2-star 2 cost to at least get you started. So I'll be interested to see if anybody plays Warpath. On the Prismatic side, Blazing Soul nerf, Build-A-Bud, less gold. Expected Unexpectedness, we've made some better drops, so consider taking this to see if there's new drops. I'll reveal full tables for this and Cypher and stuff as we finish PBE. Flexible nerf, Movable Object nerf, Living Forge nerf, Max Cap nerf, Sword Overflow nerf, Tactician's Kitchen nerf, Trifecta nerf, and Upward Mobility nerf. So, yeah. Like I said, general deflation on the augments. And that's it. That's pretty much everything you can expect on PBE. Hopefully there's a lot of fun things for you to play with here. And yeah, can't wait to try it. I'll be playing games for a week. We have 1 week till our branch cut to make changes, and yeah, so there you go. All right, again, on behalf of the entire team, we're excited for another set. We're excited for you guys to play Cyber City. Give us your feedback in PBE so we can make changes and make it better before launch in 2 weeks. And yeah, all right, that's gonna do it for me. Until next time, take it easy.